We're here today with Burlin Brower. Burlin's been a coach here in West Kentucky for a while, and I think he's over in Illinois right now. Where'd you play ball, Burlin?
I started out playing at Carlisle County. And then, like I say, I went from there and went on to Shawnee College, played a couple of years there, and kind of had to make the decision when I left junior college. Carlisle County had talked to me about coming back and coaching. And I kind of figured that was the route I was going. So while I was finishing up with Murray, I went back and worked with John Tyler as an assistant coach. And then when I got out of college, I was hired on at Carlisle. I spent 2 seasons there. And then Jimmy Long hired me at Heath. And then I went to Heath, spent I think 9 seasons as an assistant coach. And then when Jimmy got out of coaching, at Heath, I took over there for 5 years. And then they consolidated McCracken, and luckily, I had some pretty good teams at Heath, and I was hired on at McCracken as the first head coach.
That's one of the things that I think the McCracken County, when they consolidated, their sports program seemed to just gel real good, and I know it did with your basketball team. How did that come about?
Well, I think it had a lot to do with the kids. I really thought, I thought we had leaders from each school. We had the Bryce Rogers and Jason Armstrong with Heath and Caleb Stone Cipher. They were with me at Heath. We also had Cam Chumler from Lone Oak. Cam was an excellent player. Then we had Jared Burnett from Reedland, and there were several other players with them. But those kids were so unselfish, I guess would probably be the best word they could say. They just gelled. We were able to get those kids, and they acted like they'd known each other and played together all their life. But it had a lot to do with the best players on your team. And you'll hear coaches talk about that. If your best player is not your hardest worker, that makes the team tough. But if your best players are your hardest workers and your best teammates, it seems like everything falls in line. Gets a great culture going. And I thought Cam Chumler especially, he was our best player, but he was also a guy that everybody just really fell in and followed behind. Jared Burnett was at Reedland. He was a really good player. They had not had a lot of success at Reedland, but Jared was really good. And we were pretty fortunate at Heath to have some really good teams, especially in the Class A. And, those guys kind of brought that winning attitude with them. And I think everybody just kind of was really ready to win, I guess.
Some of those guys you depend on, did they come from the other schools, the different schools, Lone Oak and Reedland? And
we did.
Heath?
We, like I say, Jared came from Reedland, and like I say, Cam was from Lone Oak. And we had other players, Sergio Vega from Lone Oak. He come in, he was a good player for those guys. But like I said, we had different players from all the schools. It wasn't just one school dominated that. So I thought that was really, I thought the kind of the key to it is everybody really bought into their roles. I mean, it wasn't, I'm used to scoring 20 points, I expect to. We didn't have a lot of scoring. It was pretty balanced. I think everybody averaged somewhere between 14 to 10 points a game. And like I said, we kind of started off a little slow that summer. But as the year went on, we weren't very good defensively. I remember we talked about that. Coach Roberts and Coach Shumpert were with me, and we hired Andy Poore from Lone Oak. Andy was on that staff. But we didn't defend very well. We kind of, that was a big concern. We got better at that. And then as the year went on, but the region was good. Callaway was really good. They had pretty much everybody back. Graves had won the region the year before. Birdsong was at Graves then, and Terry, man, such a good basketball coach. They had everybody back. St. Mary's was really good that year. They had Patrick Hubert and Greg Overstreet, and they were good. So I'll never forget, even as the year got on, as we're getting late into it, there was really no clear-cut favorite. Graves had only lost 2 games in the state of Kentucky, and they were both to us. We had never beat Callaway. Callaway beat us both times in the regular season. So I remember the district championship was at McCracken, and it was packed. And St. Mary's had beat us once earlier that year, actually. And so that game went to overtime, and we ended up sneaking that game out versus St. Mary's. So the draw comes out. Marshall had upset Callaway in the district finals. So Callaway went in as a loser. So we had actually lost to both games to Callaway. Well, that's who we drew, first game. So unfortunately. So we had to go through Callaway the first thing. They had won 20-something plus games. We got in the same bracket with Graves County, And we were the only team, I'm pretty certain, we were the only team in the state of Kentucky that beat Graves that year. So Graves, that game was crazy. I mean, I remember it going down to the last 2 or 3 minutes. It was a lot of back and forth, and we ended up finding a way to win that game. Then we played Marshall in the finals, and that game was come down to the last shot. I remember Marshall took a shot, hit the front of the rim, back the rim, and rolled off. And we ended up getting a late turnover late and getting the ball. And I remember Cam Chumler having the ball in his hands, and both those assistants yelled, "Do you want a timeout?" I said, "No, we got the ball right where we want it. No, I'm not calling it."
Right, man.
Leave it. I wanted it in Cam's hands, and Cam run that clock down and made that little runner and sent us to state. So, funny story about that is about 2 days after that, man, I knew something wasn't right. I was actually taking my son to Nashville. He was in 5th grade. We were going to play some travel basketball, and I couldn't. Something in my chest was killing me. I didn't think it was a heart attack, but something wasn't right. So I got about to outside Paducah, and I said, I've got to go to Mercer. There's just no way. I was up all night, and I looked at him, and he's like 5th grade. I said, look, we're on exit 3, exit 5, whatever. If something happens, just go on 911, do it. So I ended up going in the emergency room, and it was something to do with my lungs and something that was causing chest pain to felt like a heart attack or whatever. But I remember laying down on the emergency, not the emergency room, but the emergency room. And they were putting all this stuff because my mom had died of a heart attack. So as soon as I said that, they said, "You're going to the top floor." And they found out who I was, and I looked over, and there was a lady with a Graves County shirt on. I thought, "You gotta be kidding me, really?" But needless to say, we drew Wayne County first round of the state tournament, and Wayne was 31-1 at that time, and that's when they were very good. I think they were like number 2 in the state, 3. But we went to Georgetown and practiced, getting ready to go into Rupp Arena. And I just told one of the assistants, I said, "Man, I got a good feeling." I said, "Man, our kids were very locked in and focused." A good friend of mine, Russ Tilford, was the DPP. He's the superintendent at Lyon County now. He called me and he said, not to put any pressure on you, about 5 o'clock in the morning, so we just sent 5 busloads of kids to Rupp Arena. It was crazy. The whole end zone was full of kids. So, man, we got off to a great start versus Wayne County and upset Wayne County, and made it to the Elite 8 game and lost to Bowling Green. But I felt like that propelled us to where we wanted to be. Just the Michael Siglinski probably said it best. He was the principal. He said, when Cam Chumler hit that shot, it was like catching lightning in a bottle. He said everybody could. Obviously, when you consolidate a school, there's a lot of people who didn't want that.
Right.
But as that year went on, and they did a documentary on that first year's team on how that brought that school together. It was they had a contest at the state tournament, the first 100 years of basketball, and so McCracken did a documentary on that, and it was about how that basketball team kind of brought that school and community together. But like I say, a lot of people wasn't crazy about consolidating. Still not today about it. But those kids got behind that basketball team, and everybody kind of took a lot of pride in that, I felt like. And it just kind of seemed like that got us off the launching pad, I guess.
Brought your community together, too. Yeah, it did.
I'll never forget one night we're playing Tillman at home, and it was really cool. The Pep Club was great that year. So they had, during starting lineups, on our Pep Club, they all wore their Heath, Lone Oak, and Reedland shirts. And right before they did starting lineups, they put this huge piece of paper over the whole end zone. And right after starting lineup, all the kids had T-shirts on that said McCracken United, and they ripped through that paper, and all the kids had those shirts on, and that place was just rocking. And it was. So I think, like you say, sports does a lot for communities, and I think that was something that really, like I said, that first team success kind of propelled us on to where it became we had a good culture. I felt like after that. You just put a string of good teams together down there. The years that you were down there, who was on your staff down there? You had a good staff. I remember Terry Shumpert come. He worked in and out of my building some when I was still at Heath, and I called him one day. I said, "Now, Terry, man, would you come coach with me at Heath?" He's like, "Oh, man, I can't leave Tillman. Terry Tillman guy." So I said, "Look, as we got towards the end, I had those 2 really good teams at Heath, or not 2, I had 5 good teams, but those 2 of those last 3 years we made the run at the All-A State." I said, "Man, I think I've got a good shot at getting this job." He said, "I'm going to tell you, Burlin, if you get the McCracken job, I'll come with you." So as soon as I got it, I hired him. And Dustin had been with me the whole time, Roberts, which is the head coach now at McCracken. He was with me all those years when I was at Heath, and he stayed with me all that. And I thought that was a big thing, too, is that coaching staff had always been together. And then, like I say, I think we started in, we had a really good team the first year. Then in 2018, we came right back and won it again with Cameron Cartwright, Nathan Stoneside, and we had the Civils kid, Jackson Civils was a sophomore then. We won it that year. Then we come back in 2019. I thought that was when Civils was a junior, and he got in foul trouble in the championship game. We made it to the finals. Come back and won it again in 2020 with the epic game with Marshall and Zion Harmon and Noah Dumas hitting the 2 free throws with 1.2 seconds left, sent us to state. And then we come back. But the problem with the 2020 team was that was such a good team. We'd been to the King of the Bluegrass. We had won the Lexington Christian tournament. We had actually, the year before, went down to West Palm. That was a really good team. We were top 5 in the state all year. I felt like that was my year to get to make a big run. Right. The draw come out, and we drew George Rogers Clark. We'd already beaten them once. The other game that we'd have played the winner of, I looked at it, we were ranked way above both those teams. We would have probably played Madisonville in the semis, and we'd already ran into Madisonville at the King of the Bluegrass and here at the Hoop Fest. Both those games come down in the last 30 seconds. And I felt like, man, we've got a real legitimate shot to getting to that championship game. And I know we played Louisville Mayo at the King of the Bluegrass. They beat us in overtime. Louisville Mayo was probably the best team. And not saying we'd have won it, but very few times going into the state tournament do you have your favorite to win your first 2 games. And then the whole deal with COVID came out, and they canceled the state tournament, and that was disheartening. I felt like I've told people before, that game that wakes you up at night thinking, what if we'd have got there? I got to give our kids credit. Noah Dumas, Ian Hart, Ian McEwen, Jack McEwen, Brant Brower, those boys, and Max Blackcraft, they all came back. They were all a big part of that team. Well, they felt like we got cheated not getting to go state, and they worked their butt off to come back. So we won it again in 2021, got to the Elite 8 game, beat Bullitt, and played Highlands. And Highlands, that was a heck of a game. I looked up one time, and Highlands was unbelievable. They ended up winning the state championship that year. Right. So I think about midway through the 4th or 3rd, we broke the press, got a layup, went up and won it. I turned around and looked at Roberts and Shumper and said, "Stay on top of your stuff. We got a shot to be in the semis." And I hadn't much more than said that. They had about a 6'4" point guard. He crossed one of our kids over and got to the front of the rim and got an and one. Highlands was a 9-10 point game. We played them closer than anybody, but they went on to win the state championship that year. Ironically, Marshall County being Marshall County like they do, like to put stuff together, great Hoop Fest, they got us to have a rematch with Highlands here the next year at the Hoop Fest. And that game went to overtime, and we ended up winning that. But that year was great, and we come back the next year and got beat in the regional finals. So we were really chasing that longest win streak in Region 1 history. We tied it at 51. That was probably, I talk about a lot of our accomplishments. That I thought was a big accomplishment because you had to have 3 teams in a row do it, and you couldn't do it on a Monday and not do it on a Tuesday. They had to bring it every night. And for them kids to win 51 straight Region 1 games and go 51-0 in Region 1, I was proud of that because that proved, number one, the self-discipline, the consistency, and and not ever taking anything for granted. And I felt like all those kids, especially those years, they just refused to lose. Yeah. And we wasn't the most talented in the world. We had good players, but some of those kids just would not let us lose. They found a way to win.
I think, of course, the press is really in Louisville and Lexington. I think we've had some really good players and some really good coaches down here in this area that never got their due.
I think you're right on that, and I think a lot of that has to do with, and and Coach Roberts and I and Coach Shumpert, we sat around and talked about it. A lot of teams, wanted to go to Florida, and we did go to Florida some, but we started making our mind up about 2019. We're going to Louisville election every year Christmas. We're going up there, and we want to play the best team. We want to go the king of the bluegrass. We was always having big battles with Bowling Green. Bowling Green was really good during those years. They won a couple they won one state championship and was in the finals. So we sold out those teams. And a lot of those teams won't come this way. They just won't. They can stay in that area and not have to come. So we would just have to get on a bus. And I think in 2020, we spent like 12 or 13 nights in hotel rooms. But I felt like, too, and people would ask me, part of the success we were having down here was because we were going up there and playing those tough teams and then coming back. So we learned how to deal with the 6'7" and the 6'8" athletes.
Sure. You've had a lot of success here in Kentucky. Now you retired, and I believe you're over in Illinois.
Man, I thought I was done coaching. I really was. And I sat out 2 years. I still was following McCracken everywhere. And phone call comes to, I played for Steve Dreer back in high school, and Coach Dreer called me and said, man, just come look at it. Come look at it. And the more I was around it, I met the superintendent, and they made me a really good offer. I'm not going to say they didn't. And they put me in a situation, being retired, I would be willing to, do that. And it worked out great. Sometimes, like I said earlier, we caught lightning in a bottle again there. It just seemed like kids really bought into what we did. I had a couple of really good players. I had one really good player, and he just kept getting better and better. And by the end of the year, we won a regional title over for the first time since 2006.
Yeah, that's really good. Al, I'm glad that you came on. We're just trying to conserve all of these stories we can. And hold on to them for future generations. We like to sit and talk to these stories, and I think people in the future will too. Oh, I'm telling you, I think it's a great thing. I've watched some of the videos, and I was very blessed, I guess. I came around about the right time because, like 1978, I was young, maybe 7 or 8 years old. I'm showing my age, but I remember like Dale Ray taking Heath County to the semifinal state. So I got to see some of those older coaches that were legends, even during my time of coaching, and now I see the newer guys coming. I actually played for Craner and was part of the 83. I wasn't on the team, but I got to watch it. And then you get to come and see Alan Hatcher coach. And out of all you get pats on the back, I guess what you call coaching. And Alan Hatcher called me one day, out of the blue. It's weird. I looked out and saw West Virginia, and I'm like, you don't know when you're coaching because that could be some college calling. So you answer it, and it was Alan Hatcher. And I always thought Alan was a great coach. And he got to talking to me, and it was right in the middle of that run we were having. And we were talking about some other stuff going on, but he said, and it was probably the best compliment I ever had. He said, Coach, your teams remind me so much. I keep up with it, the way y'all defend, the way you execute. He said, it reminds me so much of the teams I had. And I never really thought of myself as one of those coaches, Alan Hatcher, Rainer Sloan, Bernie Miller, Billy Chumper. I never felt like I was ever, we call it at a table, a seat at that table. Right. And let's be real, Alan Hatcher may be at the head of that table. But those guys, for Alan to call and talk about that, but those guys, I just never felt like I was ever in that group of guys because they were just legends. And now I get to see, Terry Birdsong, I thought was, Terry, when I was started coaching, Terry was outstanding in what he done. Those guys were at the table. I felt like I was over here at the Thanksgiving little card table, where they put the kids at. But, and now to see those early coaches, that group, and now to see this next group with Sawyer Donahue, what Sawyer's doing at Marshall now, and Dustin Roberts, Dustin's sharp, and him and Terry's doing a great job at McCracken. That being the next wave of great coaches to come through. So I'm proud of that. Brian O'Neill, been part of all of that also. And I know I'm not hoping I'm leaving anybody out right off the top of my head, but First Region's had some really good coaches, and I think what you guys are doing by documenting that. We always felt like when we go up to state, we'd watch some of these teams play, and they're like, I don't know what they're trying to accomplish sometimes. They were just so talented. And you'd see a guy that's averaging 25 points a game, and he's shooting wide open threes midway through the fourth. And I thought, if we give up that shot in the fourth quarter, I'm losing it on somebody, But so we felt like in Region 1, they will take you out of stuff. They really will. Well, you've probably moved up with these young coaches that you mentioned. You probably moved up with that other group up there now that you used to.
I don't know. That's an awful important. I've been fortunate to win several regionals, but like you say, those guys, you know, even guys maybe not won regionals, Jimmy Long and Henry Edwards, they didn't win regional championship. Man, what staples in their community and won a lot of all A's and stuff. So, you know, I feel like those guys, you know, are kind of up here a little bit on me still, but.
Well, we really appreciate you coming by today and telling this story to us. I know it will be valued by future viewers that look on our website and so forth, and it's really good to see you today and hear from you, Burlin.
Well, I appreciate you guys having me on.
All right. Hey, that's good.